Hi! Welcome to this introduction to the Council of the European Union's internal organization. Council meetings mostly take place in Brussels. Some meetings, however, can also take place in the country that holds the EU presidency. The frequency of council meetings at the ministerial level varies depending on the council configuration. The ones with a charged agenda, such as the General Affairs Council, meet about once a month for 1 or 2 days. The meetings are chaired by the competent minister from the country that holds the council presidency, except for the Foreign Affairs Council. This is chaired by the High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. 3 hierarchical levels are involved in the preparation of council meetings and in its decision-making process. First, a Commission proposal goes to the working parties. They are composed of member state officials who conduct a first assessment and identify points of agreement and of disagreement. Then, the committees of permanent representatives, the so-called co-repairs, discuss the proposal. And lastly, the ministers themselves discuss controversial issues on which the lower levels have not been able to agree. Issues that could not be solved at the civil servant level in the working parties are referred to one of 2 committees of permanent representatives, the so-called co-repairs. This is an acronym of the French name Comité des représentants permanents. Each EU member state has a permanent representation in Brussels. This is a kind of embassy to the European Union. Their ambassador is called permanent representative. Coreper 1 brings together all deputy permanent representatives of the member states. And Coreper 2 is the meeting of the permanent representatives themselves. Coreper 1 is in charge of policy areas including health and consumer affairs, competitiveness, transportation, environment, and culture. Coreper 2 is in charge of the more politically sensitive policy areas, mainly general affairs and external relations, economic and financial affairs, and justice and home affairs. Contentious issues that could not even be solved by Coreper 1 or 2 are referred to the meeting of the ministers. A typical agenda of a council meeting has 3 different item groups. The first are information points, on which no decision is needed. The second are so-called A items, on which a decision can be taken but without debate. These are the issues on which working parties and the co-repairs could already agree. And then third, there are the so-called B items, on which a debate is needed. A items can be adopted by any council configuration. For example, a fisheries decision can be taken by the Economic and Financial Affairs Council. When a legislative proposal has made its way up to the council meeting, a decision on whether to accept, amend, or reject this proposal must be made. In the early years of the EU's evolution, decision-making in the Council of the EU generally happened by unanimity. However, multiple treaty revisions have shifted the decision-making requirements to qualified majority voting in a vast number of policy areas. A qualified majority is reached when 55% of all member states, representing 65% of the EU population, are in favor of a certain decision. In the few areas in which the proposal is not submitted by the Commission or the High Representative, a qualified majority is reached when 72% of all member states, representing 65% of the EU population, are in favor. Qualified majority voting does not apply to politically sensitive policy areas such as the common foreign and security policy and the common security and defense policy, with a few exceptions, of course. Taxation, social security, and citizens' rights are also excluded and rather decided upon by unanimity. Although the treaties allow for QMV on a broad range of issues, de facto, the Council of the European Union only calls for a formal vote in roughly 10% of its decisions. The rest is decided by consensus, without formal voting. The absence of formal voting stems from the consensus culture in the Council. This modus operandi helps retain member states' confidence in the EU system. Since member states must transpose EU policies into national policies, imposing a policy on them seems likely to disincentivize proper transposition. As an alternative to a dissenting vote, member states can choose to attach a so-called dissenting statement to the Council minutes. In this way, they can avoid breaking the Council consensus culture, but still make their dissenting view on a certain aspect publicly known. The Council of the European Union is organized in a hierarchical structure, in which many not so controversial decisions are taken at the level of the working parties. The more controversial an issue, the higher up the hierarchy it is discussed. Qualified majority voting applies to many decisions today, but de facto, voting does not always happen, and the Council seeks consensus on many issues.